the bullet that shattered the window of the general store in Pioche, Nevada, missed Katherine Lawson's head by 3 inches, and that was the moment she knew her past had finally caught up with her. It was late September in 1878, and the dust from the mining operations hung thick in the air like a curtain waiting to fall. Katherine had been examining a bolt of blue calico fabric when the glass exploded inward, sending shards across the wooden counter. She dropped to the floor instantly, her heart hammering against her ribs so hard she thought it might break through. The shopkeeper, an elderly man named Mr. Henderson, let out a yelp and ducked behind his register. "Stay down," Katherine hissed, already crawling toward the back door. She had practiced this scenario in her mind 100 times since arriving in Pioche 3 months ago. She knew every exit, every alley, every hiding place in this rough mining town. She had to. Men like the ones hunting her did not give up easily. She burst through the back door into the alley, her skirts tangling around her legs as she ran. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly, and sweat already dampened her collar. Behind her, she heard shouting. Male voices, angry and determined. She recognized one of them, and her blood turned to ice. Frank Morrison. He had found her. Katherine ran harder, her boots slipping on loose gravel. She turned a corner and slammed directly into something solid. Strong hands caught her shoulders, steadying her before she fell backward. She looked up into a pair of storm-gray eyes set in a sun-bronzed face. "Easy there," the man said, his voice low and calm despite her obvious panic. "What's got you running like the devil himself is on your heels?" Katherine tried to pull away, but his grip remained firm without being painful. He was tall, maybe 6 feet, with dark hair that needed cutting and a jaw shadowed with stubble. A cowboy, she realized, taking in his worn leather vest, faded denims, and the Colt revolver holstered at his hip. A dusty hat hung down his back by its cord. "Let me go," she gasped. "Please, they are coming." The cowboy's eyes sharpened. Without another word, he pulled her into the narrow space between 2 buildings, pressing her against the weathered wood and positioning himself in front of her. His body blocked her from view of the alley. She could smell leather and sage and honest sweat on him. Footsteps pounded past their hiding spot. Katherine held her breath, counting 3, maybe 4 men. The cowboy remained perfectly still, one hand resting casually on his gun belt. She noticed his breathing had not changed at all. Steady and even, like hiding women from armed men was something he did every Tuesday. When the footsteps faded, he stepped back slightly but did not release her. "You going to tell me what kind of trouble you are in, or do I have to guess?" Katherine met his eyes. They were kind, she realized. Kind and intelligent and maybe a little amused despite everything. The kind you should stay far away from if you know what is good for you. "That's so." The corner of his mouth quirked up. "Well, I have never been particularly good at knowing what is good for me. Name's Zachary Dalton, but most folks call me Zach." "Katherine Lawson," she said before she could think better of it. Then she cursed herself internally. She should not be giving her real name to strangers. "Well, Miss Lawson, those boys who just ran past looked like they meant business. The kind of business that usually ends badly for someone." He tilted his head, studying her face. "You kill somebody?" "No." The word came out sharper than she intended. "I witnessed something I should not have." "Something that powerful men want kept quiet." Zach nodded slowly, as if this made perfect sense. "And now those powerful men want to make sure you stay quiet permanently." "Yes." Katherine's shoulders sagged. She was so tired of running, of looking over her shoulder, of sleeping with a knife under her pillow. "You should go. Being seen with me is dangerous." "Probably," Zach agreed. "But I have always thought danger was just life's way of keeping things interesting." He finally released her shoulders and stepped back, giving her space. "Where were you headed before you ran into me? Literally, I mean." Katherine had not thought that far ahead. She had no plan beyond getting away from Morrison and his men. "I do not know. Out of town, I suppose. Though I have no horse and my belongings are at the boarding house." "Which boarding house?" "Mrs. Chen's on Silver Street." Zach's eyebrows rose slightly. "The Chinese woman's place. That takes some courage in this town," Katherine bristled. "Mrs. Chen runs the cleanest, most respectable establishment in Pioche. The fact that small-minded people judge her based on where she was born says more about them than her." The amusement in Zach's eyes deepened into something warmer, like respect. "I was not criticizing your choice, Miss Lawson. Just noting that you do not seem to care much what folks think. I like that." He glanced toward the mouth of the alley. "Those men will be circling back soon. We need to move. My horse is stabled at the livery on the north end of town. Can you ride?" "Yes, but I cannot ask you to help me. You do not even know me." "True enough," Zach said. "But I figure anyone who chooses Mrs. Chen's place over the other boarding houses, and who has powerful men trying to kill her for witnessing something she should not have, is probably on the right side of whatever story this is." He offered his hand. "Come on. We can argue about it later when we are not standing in an alley waiting to get shot." Katherine looked at his outstretched hand. Every instinct screamed at her not to trust anyone, not to involve this stranger in her nightmare. But those same instincts had failed her before. She had trusted the wrong people, believed the wrong promises. Maybe it was time to take a different kind of chance. She placed her hand in his. His palm was calloused and warm, his grip solid and sure. "All right, Mr. Dalton. But I feel obligated to warn you that men have died because of me. Not by my hand, but because of what I know." Zach's smile was slow and genuine, transforming his whole face. "Miss Lawson, I have survived stampedes, flash floods, rattlesnake bites, and a very angry husband who did not appreciate me teaching his wife to shoot so she could protect herself from his fists. I reckon I can handle whatever trouble you brought to town." He started moving toward the opposite end of the alley, keeping her hand in his. "Though I am curious what you witnessed that has these men so worked up." Katherine took a breath. She had not spoken the words aloud to anyone since fleeing San Francisco 6 months ago. "I saw a judge take a bribe to acquit a man of murder. Not just any murder. The man killed 3 Chinese laborers working on the railroad, beat them to death with a shovel over a $50 gambling debt. I was working as a clerk in the courthouse, copying documents. I was in the judge's chambers retrieving a file when the money changed hands. The judge is James Morrison, Federal Circuit Court. The man who just shot at me is his brother Frank." Zach's hand tightened fractionally on hers. "And the man who was acquitted? Terrence Vaughn. He owns half the silver mines in California and is starting to buy up claims here in Nevada." Katherine's voice went flat. 3 days after the acquittal, my boarding house caught fire. The landlady died. I got out through a window. That is when I started running." They had reached the end of the alley. Zach peered around the corner, checking for threats. "San Francisco to Pioche, that is a lot of running. I went to Sacramento first, then Virginia City, then Silver City, then here." Katherine kept her voice low. "Every time I think I am far enough away, they find me again. Frank Morrison is relentless. I think his brother is paying him well to make sure I never testify if anyone ever investigates the case." "Will anyone investigate?" Zach asked. They moved quickly along the back of a row of buildings, staying out of sight of the main street. "I do not know. I wrote letters to the territorial governor, to the attorney general, to anyone I thought might listen. I do not know if they were ever delivered. I do not know if anyone cares about justice for 3 Chinese men when there is mining money involved." The bitterness in her own voice surprised her. Zach was quiet for a moment, navigating them through the maze of Pioche's back streets with the ease of someone familiar with the town. Finally, he said, "My father was a lawman. He used to say that justice might be blind, but she needs folks willing to be her eyes and her voice. You did a brave thing writing those letters. Does not matter if you are scared. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is doing what is right despite it." Something in Catherine's chest loosened just a fraction. "Your father sounds like a good man." "He was. Died when I was 16, dry-gulched by outlaws he was tracking." Zach's voice carried no self-pity, just matter-of-fact grief. "He never gave up on doing right, though, even when it cost him." He stopped at a corner, holding up a hand for her to wait. "The livery is just ahead. I am going to get my horse. There is a storage room in the back where they keep feed. Hide there. I will come get you." Katherine nodded. Before she could move away, Zach caught her hand again. "Miss Lawson, I meant what I said. Trouble is worth it if it brought you here today. I do not know where this road leads, but I am not leaving you to walk it alone." Her throat tightened. "You do not know me." "Not yet," he agreed, "but I would like to." Then he was gone, moving with surprising silence for a man his size. Katherine slipped into the livery's storage room, wedging herself between sacks of oats and barley. The smell of grain and hay surrounded her, oddly comforting. Through a gap in the boards, she could see Zach talking to the stable hand, a young man who seemed nervous. Money changed hands, more than what saddling a horse should cost. Zach was buying the boy's silence. 5 minutes later, Zach appeared at the storage room door leading a large buckskin gelding. "This is Chester. He is steady and smart. Come on, we need to move." "Where are we going?" Katherine asked, taking the hand he offered to help her up. "My place." "It is a ranch about 10 miles north of here, up in the hills. Small operation, just me and my hired hand, but it is defensible and off the main roads. We can hole up there while we figure out what to do next." "We," Katherine repeated. "Mr. Dalton, I cannot ask you to append your life for me." Zach swung into the saddle with practiced ease, then reached down for her. "Good thing you are not asking. I am offering." When she hesitated, his expression softened. "Look, I understand if you do not trust me yet, but right now you need somewhere safe and I am offering that. No strings, no expectations, just somewhere you can catch your breath and make a plan." "All right." Katherine looked into those steady gray eyes and made her decision. She grasped his forearm and he pulled her up behind him with surprising strength. She had to wrap her arms around his waist to keep her seat, feeling the solid muscle beneath his shirt. "Hold on tight," Zach said, and urged Chester forward. They left Pioche at a steady trot, not fast enough to draw attention but quick enough to put distance between them and the men hunting her. Katherine pressed her cheek against Zach's back, feeling his heartbeat through the fabric of his shirt. The rhythm was steady, unworried. She let herself take comfort in that steadiness. The landscape opened up around them, harsh and beautiful in the way of Nevada. Rocky hills dotted with sagebrush and juniper, vast stretches of scrubland broken by sudden outcroppings of stone. The sun was starting its descent toward the western horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. "Tell me about your ranch," Katherine said after a while, mostly to distract herself from thinking about Frank Morrison's face, from wondering how close she had come to dying today. "It is not much," Zach said. "About 300 acres, small herd of cattle, some horses. I have been building it up for 5 years now, ever since I saved enough from working trail drives and ranch hand jobs. The house is nothing fancy, just 4 rooms, but it has a good well and a decent barn. My hired hand is a Paiute man named Thomas. He is quiet but reliable. Good with the horses. You trust him. With my life, Zach said simply. He saved it once during a blizzard 2 winters back. I got turned around in whiteout conditions, nearly froze to death. Thomas found me and got me home. We have been partners ever since. Katherine absorbed this information, building a picture of Zachary Dalton in her mind. A man who employed a Paiute worker as a partner rather than just hired help. A man who had built something from nothing through hard work. A man who would risk himself for a stranger because it was the right thing to do. I am scared, she admitted quietly. I have been scared for so long I almost do not remember what it feels like not to be looking over my shoulder. Zach's hand came down to cover hers where they rested against his stomach. Fear is human, but you are still here, still fighting. That is what matters. They rode on as the sun sank lower. The temperature began to drop, and Katherine was grateful for Zach's warmth in front of her. She found herself noticing things about him. The way he sat the horse, completely relaxed and in harmony with the animal's movement. The width of his shoulders. The gentle way he spoke to Chester, a low murmur of encouragement. As twilight gathered, they turned off the main trail onto a smaller track that wound up into the hills. The path was barely visible, overgrown with brush in places. Zach navigated it from memory, occasionally leaning to avoid low-hanging branches. Almost there, he said. See that ridge ahead? The ranch is just beyond it. They crested the ridge, and Katherine saw a small valley spread below them. A house, weathered but solid-looking, stood near a creek lined with cottonwoods. A barn and a few outbuildings completed the picture. Cattle grazed in a meadow, dark shapes in the gathering darkness. Smoke rose from the house's chimney. That will be Thomas starting supper, Zach said. He is probably wondering where I got to. I was supposed to be back this afternoon. As they approached the house, the door opened. A man stepped out onto the porch, silhouetted against the lamplight from within. He was tall and lean, with long dark hair tied back. Even at a distance, Katherine could sense his alertness, the way he assessed them. Zach raised a hand in greeting. Evening, Thomas. I brought company. They pulled up in front of the house and Zach dismounted, then helped Katherine down. Her legs were stiff from the ride and she stumbled slightly. Zach steadied her with a hand on her elbow. Thomas descended the porch steps, his dark eyes moving from Zach to Katherine and back again. Trouble? Some, Zach admitted. Thomas, this is Miss Katherine Lawson. She needs a safe place to stay for a while. Miss Lawson, this is Thomas Walker. Thomas nodded to Katherine, his expression neutral but not unfriendly. Welcome. Supper is almost ready. Thank you, Katherine said. I am sorry to impose. No imposition, Thomas said. He looked at Zach again. How much trouble? The kind with guns and determination, Zach said. Men came looking for her in town today, started shooting. I do not think they followed us, but we should keep watch tonight just in case. Thomas nodded, unsurprised. I will take care of Chester. You get her inside and fed. She looks ready to fall over. Katherine wanted to protest that she was fine, but the truth was that Thomas was right. The adrenaline that had kept her going was fading, leaving exhaustion in its wake. She let Zach guide her up the porch steps and into the house. The interior was simple but clean. A large main room served as kitchen and living area, with a stone fireplace dominating one wall. A table and chairs occupied the space near the kitchen area, and a worn but comfortable-looking sofa faced the fireplace. Doors led to what she assumed were bedrooms. Sit, Zach said, pulling out a chair at the table. Let me get you some water. Katherine sank into the chair gratefully. Now that she had stopped moving, her whole body ached. The cut on her hand from the flying glass was starting to throb. She had not even noticed it during the escape. Zach brought her water in a tin cup and crouched beside her chair, frowning at her hand. You are bleeding. It is nothing. Just a small cut. Let me clean it anyway, Zach said. He fetched a basin of water and clean cloth, then gently took her hand in his. His touch was careful, almost tender, as he cleaned the wound. The cut was not deep, but it ran across her palm for about 2 inches. This might sting, he warned, applying some kind of salve. It did sting, but Katherine bit her lip and did not complain. Zach wrapped her hand with clean cotton bandaging, his movements practiced. You have done this before, she observed. Ranch work means injuries. You learn basic doctoring or you do not last long out here. He finished tying off the bandage and looked up at her. Their faces were close enough that she could see gold flecks in his gray eyes, close enough to count the faint lines at their corners. There. How does that feel? Better. Thank you. Katherine's voice came out softer than she intended. For a moment neither of them moved. The air between them seemed to thicken, charged with something Katherine could not quite name. Then Thomas came through the door, and the moment broke. Zach stood quickly, moving to help Thomas with the meal. Katherine watched them work together, their movements coordinated from long practice. Thomas ladled out stew from a pot hanging over the fire while Zach sliced bread. Within minutes, they had the table set with 3 bowls of beef stew, thick slices of bread and butter. The food was simple but good, and Katherine realized she had not eaten since breakfast. She tried to eat slowly, to maintain some semblance of manners, but hunger won out. Both men seemed to understand. They did not comment on her appetite, just ensured her bowl stayed filled. So, Thomas said after a while, his voice quiet and measured. What is the story? Katherine glanced at Zach, who nodded encouragingly. So she told it again, the whole ugly tale. Thomas listened without interrupting, his face impassive. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. A judge, he said finally. That is powerful medicine to go against. I know, Katherine said. That is why I have been running. I have no proof, just my word. And who is going to believe a woman clerk over a federal judge? Someone who cares about truth, Zach said firmly. Those letters you wrote, they went somewhere. Someone read them. Maybe they are already investigating. Or maybe they were thrown away, Katherine said, unable to keep the bitterness from her voice. Maybe no one cares that 3 men died and their killer walks free because he has money and connections. Thomas's expression shifted just slightly. What were their names? The 3 who died. I do not know, Katherine admitted, feeling ashamed. The court documents just listed them as laborers, Chinese laborers, not even names, just numbers. They had names, Thomas said softly. They had families. They had stories. Just because those stories were not written down does not mean they did not exist. He met Katherine's eyes. You tried to speak for them. That matters. Tears stung Katherine's eyes. She had not cried through any of this, through the fire and the running and the fear. But Thomas's simple acknowledgement of those men's humanity broke something loose inside her. She blinked rapidly, fighting for control. Zach reached across the table and covered her uninjured hand with his. You are safe here. Tonight, at least, you can rest. We will figure out the next steps tomorrow. Katherine nodded, not trusting her voice. The warmth of Zach's hand on hers felt like an anchor, something solid to hold onto in a world that had tilted sideways. After supper, Zach showed her to one of the bedrooms. It was small but clean, with a narrow bed covered in a quilt, a washstand, and a window that looked out toward the dark hills. This is usually the spare room, so there are not any personal items in here. You should be comfortable enough. There is water in the pitcher if you want to wash up, and I will leave some clean clothes outside the door. They will be too big, but better than sleeping in a dress. Thank you, Katherine said, for everything. I still cannot quite believe you are doing all this for a stranger. Zach leaned against the doorframe, his expression thoughtful. "My father used to say that strangers are just friends you have not had a chance to know yet. And besides, Miss Lawson, I do not think you feel much like a stranger anymore." After he left, Katherine washed her face and hands in the basin, careful of her bandaged palm. True to his word, Zach left clothes outside her door, a soft flannel shirt and a pair of long johns that she could use as sleeping clothes. They smelled faintly of soap and sage. She changed out of her dress, hanging it over the chair. The shirt was enormous on her, hanging nearly to her knees, but it was clean and soft, and when she climbed into the bed, she felt safer than she had in months. Outside, she could hear low voices. Zach and Thomas making plans for watch rotations. It should have frightened her, the reminder that danger might still be out there. Instead, it comforted her. She was not alone anymore. For the first time in half a year, someone else was standing guard, watching for threats, caring whether she lived or died. Katherine closed her eyes and, against all odds, fell into deep sleep. She woke to the smell of coffee and bacon. Morning light streamed through the window, painting golden squares on the wooden floor. For a moment she could not remember where she was. Then it all came rushing back. Pioche, the shooting. Zach, her rescuer, her unexpected ally. In the clear light of morning, she could examine her feelings about him. He was handsome, certainly in a rugged, sun-weathered way, but it was more than that. There was a steadiness to him, a calm strength that made her feel like maybe, just maybe, things might work out. And that was dangerous, because hope could break a heart faster than fear ever could. She dressed in her own clothes again, mourning the loss of the comfortable shirt, and went out to the main room. Zach was at the stove cooking breakfast. He had shaved, she noticed, revealing the strong lines of his jaw. His hair was damp, as if he had washed at the pump outside. "Morning," he said, glancing over his shoulder with a smile that did strange things to her heartbeat. "Coffee, please." Katherine accepted the cup he poured, wrapping her hands around its warmth. "Where is Thomas?" "Out checking the cattle. He will be back soon." Zach plated bacon and eggs, setting them on the table. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in months," Katherine admitted. "Your bed is much more comfortable than the one at Mrs. Chen's boarding house." "Good. You needed the rest." Zach sat across from her, his long legs stretched out beneath the table. "I have been thinking about your situation. We need to get word to someone in authority, someone who is not connected to Judge Morrison. The territorial governor might be our best bet." "I wrote to the governor's office from Virginia City," Katherine said. "I never received a response. Letters can go astray or get intercepted. We need to deliver the message in person." Zach took a sip of his coffee, thinking. "I have a friend in Carson City, fellow I rode with on a trail drive a few years back. He works for the territorial marshal now. Good man, honest. If we can get your story to him, he will make sure it reaches the right ears." "Carson City is nearly 200 miles from here," Katherine said. "And Frank Morrison knows I am in Nevada. He will have people watching the roads, the stage stations." "Then we do not take the roads or the stages," Zach said. "We ride cross-country, stick to the back trails. It will take longer, but it will be safer." Katherine set down her fork, her appetite suddenly gone. "You are talking about leaving your ranch for weeks. What about your cattle?" "Your livelihood. Thomas can manage the place while I am gone. He has done it before." Zach's gray eyes were steady on hers. "Miss Lawson, those men will not stop hunting you. You know that. Running from town to town, always looking over your shoulder, that is no way to live. The only way out of this is to bring the truth to people who can do something about it. And if they do not believe me, if the judge's influence reaches even to Carson City, then we go higher. Territorial legislature, federal marshals. Hell, we will go to Washington if we have to." Zach's voice was fierce with conviction. What Judge Morrison did was wrong. What Terrence Vaughn did was murder. That has to mean something. Katherine looked at this man who barely knew her, who was willing to risk everything to help her seek justice for 3 Chinese laborers he had never met. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why do you care so much?" Zach was quiet for a moment, his fingers turning his coffee cup in slow circles. "When I was 12, my father arrested a man for beating his wife. It was not the first time, but the woman had finally gotten the courage to testify. The judge let the man go with a warning, said a man's home was his castle, what he did there was his business. 2 weeks later, the man killed his wife and then himself. My father blamed himself for not doing more. He carried that weight until the day he died." He looked up, meeting Katherine's eyes. "I learned from that. I learned that when you see something wrong, you do not look away. You do not tell yourself it is not your business. You stand up and you fight even if the odds are against you. Especially then. Because if good people do nothing, the bad ones win. And I will be damned if I am going to let men like Morrison and Vaughn win." Katherine's throat was tight. "I do not deserve this, do not deserve you." "That is where you are wrong," Zach said. "You witnessed an injustice, and instead of staying quiet, instead of protecting yourself, you tried to make it right. You deserve every bit of help I can give you and then some." The door opened and Thomas came in, bringing cold morning air with him. He nodded to them both. "Everything quiet out there, no signs of riders. Good." Zach explained his plan to ride to Carson City. Thomas listened, then nodded. "I can hold down the ranch. But Zach, if you are riding that far with someone hunting her, you need to be careful. Stay off the main trails, avoid towns where you can." "I know," Zach said. "We will need supplies, food, bedrolls, ammunition." "I will get everything together," Thomas said. "When do you want to leave?" Zach looked at Katherine. "What do you say? Are you ready for one more ride?" This time toward something instead of away. Katherine thought about it. She thought about the fear she had been living with, the constant running, the nightmares. She thought about 3 men whose names she did not know but whose deaths she could not forget. She thought about the steady strength in Zach's eyes, the promise of protection and partnership. "Yes," she said, "I am ready." They spent the day preparing. Thomas gathered supplies while Zach checked over their gear. Katherine washed her dress and mended a tear in the hem, trying to make herself useful. She caught Zach watching her several times, and each time he smiled before looking away. It made her stomach flutter in a way that had nothing to do with fear. As the sun was setting, Katherine found Zach in the barn checking Chester's hooves. "Can I talk to you for a moment?" "Of course." Zach straightened, giving her his full attention. "I have been thinking about what you said this morning, about standing up and fighting." Katherine twisted her hands together. "I want you to know that if anything happens to you because of me, I will never forgive myself." Zach stepped closer, closing the distance between them. "Katherine," he said, using her first name for the first time. The sound of it in his deep voice sent warmth through her. "Nothing is going to happen to me. I have been taking care of myself in rough country for a long time, and now I have even more reason to be careful." "What reason?" "You," he said simply. "I want to see this through, want to help you get justice. But more than that, I want to see where this goes, this thing between us. You feel it too, do not you?" Katherine's breath caught. "I do not know what you mean." "Yes, you do." Zach reached out, his hand hovering near her cheek but not quite touching. "I have felt it since the moment I caught you in that alley, like something clicked into place, like I had been waiting for you without knowing it." His hand dropped. "Tell me I am wrong. Tell me you do not feel anything, and I will never mention it again. We will be business partners, nothing more. But if you feel even a fraction of what I am feeling, I need to know." Katherine's heart was racing. She should lie. She should tell him she felt nothing, protect both of them from the complication of feelings in the middle of this dangerous situation. But when she looked into his eyes, the truth came spilling out. "I feel it," she whispered, "and it terrifies me." "Why?" "Because everyone I have cared about has gotten hurt. My parents died of influenza when I was 17. My best friend died in that boarding house fire. I am cursed, Zach. I bring disaster to the people I love." "You do not bring disaster," Zach said firmly. "Evil men bring disaster. Bad luck brings disaster. You are just a woman trying to do what is right in a world that punishes that. And I am a man who sees your courage and your heart and wants to protect both." "This is crazy," Katherine said, but she did not step away. "We have known each other for less than 24 hours. I know." Zach's smile was crooked, self-deprecating. "My head is telling me I am a fool, but my gut, my instincts, they are telling me something else entirely. They are telling me that you are the reason I have been building this ranch, creating a life. I was building it for someone. I just did not know who until yesterday." Katherine wanted to believe him. God, how she wanted to believe that something good could come from all this horror and fear. What if we are both just caught up in the moment? Fear and adrenaline can make people feel things that are not real. "Then we will figure that out along the way," Zach said. "But Katherine, I do not think what I am feeling is just adrenaline, and I do not think what you are feeling is either." Before Katherine could respond, Thomas appeared in the barn doorway. "Sorry to interrupt, but we have a problem. There are riders coming up the trail, 3 of them." Zach's hand went to his gun immediately. "Morrison? Cannot tell yet. They are still about a mile out." "Get Katherine in the house," Zach ordered. "Hide her in the root cellar. I will deal with whoever is coming." But Katherine shook her head. "No more hiding. If it is Morrison, he already knows I am here or he would not be coming. Hiding will not help." "She is right," Thomas said quietly. "If they came all this way, they are not leaving without answers." Zach's jaw was tight, but he nodded. "All right. But you stay behind me, understand? And at the first sign of trouble, you run. There is a trail behind the barn that leads up into the rocks. Take it and do not look back." The 3 of them returned to the house. Zach positioned himself on the porch, rifle in hand. Thomas took a spot near the barn with his own rifle. Katherine stood in the doorway, her heart pounding, one hand wrapped around the small pistol Zach had given her. The riders came into view, silhouetted against the sunset. As they drew closer, Katherine's blood ran cold. Frank Morrison rode in the center, flanked by 2 hard-looking men she did not recognize. They pulled up about 20 yards from the house, their hands near their weapons but not drawing. "That is far enough," Zach called out. "State your business." Morrison's eyes went past Zach to Katherine. His smile was cold. "I am here for the woman. She has something that belongs to my brother." "She does not have anything of yours," Zach said, "and she is not going anywhere." "You do not know who you are dealing with, Cowboy," Morrison said. "My brother is a federal judge. That woman is wanted for theft of official documents." "That is a lie," Katherine said, stepping forward despite Zach's warning look. "I never stole anything. I just saw the truth, and your brother wants me dead because of it." Morrison's smile widened. "See, she admits to spying on a federal official. That is a crime. Now step away from her, Cowboy, before you make this worse for yourself." "Not happening," Zach said. His voice was calm, but Katherine could see the tension in his shoulders. "You are on my land without permission. You have 3 seconds to turn around and ride out before I enforce my property rights." One of Morrison's men laughed. "There are 3 of us, old man. How do you figure you are going to make us do anything?" "Well," Thomas said from his position by the barn, his rifle now clearly aimed at the laughing man, "there are only 3 of you and you are out in the open. That makes you targets, not threats. The situation balanced on a knife's edge. Katherine could see Morrison calculating odds, weighing his options. His hand drifted toward his gun. "Think carefully," Zach said. "You are here to kill a witness, which means you are not operating under any legal authority. You are just murderers for hire. You start shooting, and even if you win, every lawman in Nevada will know what happened here. Your brother's name will be connected to this. His career will be over, investigation or no investigation." Morrison's hand stopped. Zach had found his weak point. Morrison did not care about his own life, but he cared about his brother's position and power. "She cannot run forever," Morrison said finally, "and you cannot protect her every minute of every day." "I can try," Zach said, "and I am pretty good at what I set my mind to." For a long moment no one moved. Then Morrison jerked his reins, turning his horse. "This is not over." "Yeah, it is," Zach said, "because tomorrow morning we are riding to Carson City to tell this story to the territorial marshal. And you know what? I am also going to stop by the newspaper office. Tell them all about Judge James Morrison and his brother Frank, and how they have been hunting a woman across 3 states to keep her quiet about a bribery and murder case. Even if they do not believe it, the story will be out there. People will start asking questions." Morrison's face went dark with rage. "You will regret this." "Maybe," Zach agreed, "but I will regret doing nothing more." Morrison spat in the dust and rode away, his men following. They did not gallop, just rode at a steady pace, and somehow that was more menacing than if they had fled. It was a promise. They would be back. When they were out of sight, Zach finally lowered his rifle. "Thomas, keep watch. I do not trust that they are really gone." "Agreed." Thomas did not move from his position. Zach turned to Katherine, and she saw the fear in his eyes for the first time. Not fear for himself, but for her. "Are you all right?" Katherine nodded, though she was shaking. "You should not have provoked him like that, threatening to go to the newspaper." "It was not a threat. It was a promise." Zach set his rifle aside and took her hands, bandaged and whole. "Katherine, I meant every word. Tomorrow we ride to Carson City and we tell everyone who will listen. We end this. He will kill us before we get there. He can try." Zach's smile was grim. "But he is going to find it harder than he thinks. I know every inch of this country, every trail and hiding place, and I have something Morrison does not." "What?" "A reason to survive, to win." His hands tightened on hers. "You," Katherine felt tears building again. "I cannot be your reason. It is too much responsibility." "You do not get to decide that," Zach said gently. "I do. And I choose you, Katherine Lawson. I choose to stand with you, fight for you, believe in you. You can accept that or not, but you cannot change it." Before Katherine could think better of it, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. Zach went still for just a heartbeat, then his arms came around her, strong and sure. He smelled like leather and gunpowder and safety. Katherine pressed her face against his chest, listening to his heartbeat, letting herself take comfort in his solid presence. "Thank you," she whispered, "for being brave enough for both of us." "You are plenty brave on your own," Zach said into her hair, "but I am happy to share the load." They stood like that for a long moment, holding each other as the sun finished setting and stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Finally, Thomas cleared his throat. "Hate to break this up, but we should get inside and make plans. If we are riding out tomorrow, we need to be ready for anything." They spent the evening going over every detail. Maps were spread across the table, routes debated and discarded. Thomas suggested traveling mostly at night, using the darkness for cover. Zach agreed, pointing out places where they could hole up during the day. Katherine listened and learned, memorizing landmarks and trails. "We will need to move fast," Zach said. "Carson City is about a week's ride if we push hard and do not run into trouble." With Morrison on our trail, we might need to take a longer route, maybe 10 days. I can handle it, Katherine said. I am a better rider than you might think. My father kept horses. He taught me to ride before I could read. Zach smiled. Good to know. We will get you a proper riding skirt from town tomorrow before we leave. You are going back to Pioche. Katherine's voice went sharp with worry. Have to. We need certain supplies we do not have here, but I will be careful. Morrison rode out north. I will come in from the south, stay out of sight. Be back before noon. Katherine wanted to protest, to beg him not to take the risk, but she knew he was right. They needed supplies. Promise me you will be careful. I promise. Zach reached across the table and took her hand. In front of Thomas in the lamplight, it felt like a declaration. Thomas noticed, Katherine saw, but his expression remained neutral. That night, Katherine lay in bed unable to sleep, her mind racing through everything that had happened. In less than 48 hours, her entire world had shifted. She had gone from being alone and hunted to having allies, having purpose, having hope, and having feelings for a man that went far deeper than gratitude. She thought about Zach's words in the barn, about how he felt like he had been waiting for her. It should have sounded crazy, presumptuous even, but it did not, because she felt the same way. Like all the running, all the fear had been leading her here, to this ranch, to him, but was it real? Or was it just her heart, battered and lonely, grasping at the first kind touch? She did not know, could not know, not yet, but she wanted to find out. Wanted the chance to see where this fragile connection might lead if given time and safety to grow. First, though, they had to survive the journey to Carson City. Had to outrun or outfight Morrison and his men. Had to convince authorities to believe a woman clerk over a federal judge. The odds were not good, but they were better than they had been 2 days ago when she was alone. Morning came too quickly. Katherine woke to find Zach already gone, riding to Pioche. Thomas was outside doing chores, giving her privacy to wash and dress. She borrowed the shirt Zach had lent her that first night, wearing it over her chemise for extra warmth. It made her feel close to him, safe. Thomas came in as she was braiding her hair. Coffee is hot. Thank you. Katherine poured herself a cup and sat at the table. Thomas, can I ask you something? Sure. Why do you stay here, working this ranch with Zach? Thomas was quiet for a moment, considering. Most places, I am invisible at best, target at worst. Zach sees me as a man, as a partner. That is rare. He met her eyes. He is a good man, one of the few I have met. If you hurt him, we are going to have a problem. Katherine appreciated his bluntness. I do not want to hurt him. But I am afraid I will anyway, just by being who I am, bringing the trouble I carry. Trouble can be survived, Thomas said. Loneliness is harder. Zach has been alone a long time, building this place with no one to share it with. Then you showed up and I saw something change in him, saw hope. Do not take that away from him unless you have to. I will not, Katherine promised. I care about him, Thomas, more than I should after such a short time. Time does not matter when it is right, Thomas said. My people believe that souls recognize each other. Maybe your soul recognized his. The idea sent warmth through Katherine's chest. She wanted to believe in soul recognition, in meant to be, in destiny. After so much darkness, she wanted to believe in light. Zach returned just before noon, as promised. He brought bundles tied to his saddle and a satisfied expression. Got everything we need, and I have news. What news? Katherine asked, her heart jumping into her throat. Morrison and his men left town this morning, rode out west toward California. The stable hand told me they were asking about the fastest route to Sacramento. Sacramento. Katherine frowned. Why would they go there? Maybe they think you went that direction, or maybe they are going to report back to Judge Morrison. Zach unpacked his purchases. A split riding skirt for Katherine, more ammunition, preserved foods, a new canteen. Either way, it buys us time. If they are heading west, we can go east toward Carson City without them on our tail. Unless it is a trick, Katherine said. What if they are just trying to make us think they left, so we will let our guard down? Possible, Zach admitted. That is why we are still leaving tonight, not tomorrow. And we are still taking the back trails. But I think they really left. Morrison is not stupid. He knows we will be watching for him now. Better to regroup, make a new plan. They spent the afternoon finalizing preparations. Katherine tried on the riding skirt. It fit reasonably well, and she could move much more freely than in a dress. Zach showed her how to pack a bedroll efficiently, how to secure supplies to a saddle. Thomas gave her a horse, a gentle mare named Daisy. She is smart and steady, Thomas said, running a hand down the mare's neck. She will take care of you. As evening approached, Katherine found herself growing nervous. This was it. They were really doing this, riding across Nevada with killers potentially hunting them to accuse a federal judge of bribery. It was insane. It was necessary. It was terrifying. Zach found her in the barn, checking Daisy's saddle for the third time. Having second thoughts. 100th thoughts more like, Katherine admitted. But I am not backing out. I just needed a moment to be scared. Being scared is smart, Zach said. He leaned against the stall door, watching her. Katherine, I need you to know something. If at any point you want to turn back, we can. We can find another way. There is no other way, Katherine said. You know that as well as I do. Morrison will not stop hunting me until I am dead or his brother is exposed. This is the only path forward. I know. But I needed you to know you have choices. You are not trapped. Katherine looked at him, this man who had turned his life upside down for her. I do not feel trapped. I feel, for the first time in months, like I am moving towards something instead of just running away. That is because of you. Zach pushed off the stall door and closed the distance between them. Katherine, I know this is not the best timing, but I need to say this before we leave, in case something happens. Do not talk like that. I have to. His gray eyes were intense on hers. I am falling in love with you. I know it is fast, I know it is crazy, but it is true. And I need you to know that whatever happens out there, I do not regret any of it. Not bringing you here, not standing up to Morrison, not any of it. Because it means I got to know you, got to see your courage and your heart. That is worth anything. Katherine's breath caught. She should tell him not to love her, that she was a disaster waiting to happen. But instead, different words came out. I am falling in love with you too, and it scares me more than Morrison or his brother or any of this, because I could not bear it if you died because of me. Then I will not die, Zach said simply. He cupped her face in his hands, his palms rough and warm against her skin. We are both going to survive this. We are going to get to Carson City, tell your story, and see justice done. And then we are going to come back here and figure out what this is between us. All right, Katherine whispered. Zach leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away. She did not. When his lips met hers, it was gentle at first, almost tentative. Then Katherine reached up and pulled him closer, and the kiss deepened. It was promise and hope and desperation all mixed together. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. We should go, Zach said, his voice rough, while I can still think straight. They left the ranch as the sun was setting, riding east into the gathering darkness. Thomas stood on the porch watching them go, his hand raised in farewell. Katherine looked back once, memorizing the sight of the little ranch house with lamplight glowing in its windows. It felt like home in a way no place had since her parents died. She promised herself she would see it again. The first night of riding was uneventful. Zach navigated by starlight and memory, following trails that were barely visible even in daylight. They rode in silence mostly, saving their energy. Around midnight, they stopped to rest the horses and eat a cold meal of jerky and hardtack. "How are you holding up?" Zach asked, passing her a canteen. "Better than expected," Katherine admitted. "I think fear is energizing me." "That will fade," Zach warned. "Tomorrow you will be sore and exhausted, but we will take breaks when we can, hole up during the day and rest." They rode until just before dawn, then made camp in a small canyon with a spring. Zach showed Katherine how to set up a simple shelter using a canvas tarp and some rope. They would take turns sleeping, one always on watch. "You sleep first," Zach said. "I will wake you in 4 hours." Katherine wanted to argue, but exhaustion was dragging at her. She lay down on her bedroll, the tarp providing shade from the sun that was just beginning to peek over the canyon rim. She was asleep within minutes. She woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of birds. Zach was crouched by a small fire, nearly smokeless, heating water. He smiled when he saw her awake. "Afternoon. You slept hard." "How long?" Katherine asked, sitting up and immediately regretting it. Every muscle in her body ached. "About 6 hours. I figured you needed it." He poured coffee into a tin cup and brought it to her. "Drink this. It will help." Katherine accepted gratefully. The coffee was strong and hot and wonderful. "You should have woken me. You need rest too." "I slept a bit while you were out. Light sleep, but enough." Zach settled beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "We are making good time. Another few days like this and we will be halfway to Carson City. Assuming Morrison does not catch up with us." "There is no sign of pursuit," Zach said. "I climbed up to the canyon rim while you slept, scouted the area. We are alone out here." They spent the day resting, talking in quiet voices. Zach told her about growing up, about his father's death and the hard years that followed. Katherine told him about her parents, about the influenza epidemic that took them both within days of each other, about being 17 and alone and having to make her way in the world. "Is that how you ended up working in a courthouse?" Zach asked. "More or less. I was living in a boarding house in San Francisco, working in a laundry. The owner's sister worked in the courthouse, and when they needed someone who could write clearly and had a good memory, she recommended me. It was good work, boring sometimes, but steady and respectable." Katherine's voice went flat, until it was not. Zach took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "You are the bravest person I know." "I do not feel brave. I feel scared and tired and like I am barely holding together." "That is what brave looks like," Zach said. "It is not fearlessness. It is moving forward despite the fear." As the sun set, they prepared to ride again. Katherine's muscles protested every movement, but she gritted her teeth and kept going. Zach noticed her discomfort. "It will get easier," he promised. "Your body will adjust." He was right. By the third night, Katherine's muscles had stopped screaming with every step. She fell into the rhythm of riding, letting her body move with Daisy's gait. The nights blurred together, measured in miles covered and stars wheeling overhead. They saw no signs of Morrison or his men. In fact, they saw almost no one. Zach kept them to the most remote trails, avoiding settlements and other travelers. Once, they spotted a camp in the distance and took a long detour around it. Another time, they hid in a dry wash while a group of riders passed nearby. But the riders were not looking for them, just traveling, and they passed without incident. On the 5th night, they reached a place Zach called Willow Spring. A genuine spring fed a small pool surrounded by willow trees, a miracle of green in the harsh landscape. "We can rest here tomorrow," Zach said. "Maybe even risk a small fire and hot food." The idea of hot food was enough to make Katherine's mouth water. They had been living on cold meals for days. They made camp under the willows, and Katherine actually smiled when Zach got a fire going and started heating beans and coffee. "This is heaven," she said, cradling a plate of hot food. "I did not know beans could taste so good." Zach laughed. "Everything tastes good when you have been eating jerky for 5 days straight." After they ate, they sat by the dying fire. The night was cool but not cold, and the sound of the spring was soothing. Katherine found herself leaning against Zach's shoulder, his arm around her. It felt natural, right? "Tell me about your ranch," she said. "About what you want to build there." Zach was quiet for a moment, his fingers absently stroking her arm. "I want it to be more than just a cattle operation. I want it to be a real home. A place where people are judged by their character, not their color or where they came from. A place where Thomas is a partner, not just hired help. A place where—" He trailed off. "Where what?" "Where you could be happy," Zach finished quietly, "if you wanted to stay. If this, whatever this is between us, turns out to be real and lasting." Katherine's heart squeezed. "That sounds like a proposal, Mr. Dalton." "Not yet," Zach said. "But maybe someday, if we survive this, if you decide you can stand being around a stubborn cowboy long term." "I think I could manage that," Katherine said softly. She turned her head to look up at him. "Zach, I need you to know that whatever happens, these days with you have been the best of my life. You have given me hope again. You have made me believe that maybe I deserve good things." "You deserve everything good," Zach said fiercely. He kissed her forehead, gentle and sweet. "And I am going to do everything in my power to make sure you get it." They held each other as the fire burned down to embers and the stars blazed overhead. Katherine felt safe for the first time in so long. Not because there was no danger, but because she was not facing it alone anymore. She had Zach, and that made all the difference. The next morning, they allowed themselves the luxury of sleeping late and waking slowly. Zach caught fish from the spring and they cooked them for breakfast. Fresh fish after days of preserved food was a revelation. Katherine ate until she was actually full, a rare feeling on this journey. "We are about halfway to Carson City," Zach said, studying his maps. "If we keep this pace, we should arrive in another 5 or 6 days. I think we can risk pushing a bit harder now, cover more ground each night." "Whatever you think is best," Katherine said. She trusted his judgment completely at this point. That night, they rode longer than usual, taking advantage of a full moon that lit the landscape almost like day. The horses seemed to sense their rider's urgency and moved with willing energy. They covered nearly 30 miles before Zach called a halt. The days fell into a pattern. Ride at night, rest during the day, push steadily east toward Carson City and whatever awaited them there. Katherine found herself thinking not just about the journey's end, but about what came after. If they succeeded, if Judge Morrison was investigated and Terrence Vaughn brought to justice, what then? She could go back to San Francisco, try to rebuild her life there. But the idea held no appeal. That city held only painful memories now. Or she could try someplace new, another fresh start in another town where no one knew her history. Or she could go back to the ranch with Zach. That idea made her heart race in a way that had nothing to do with fear. She could picture it so clearly. Working beside him to build something real and lasting. Learning the rhythms of ranch life. Making a home in that simple 4-room house. Maybe someday, adding more rooms for children who would grow up knowing both their parents, surrounded by love and safety. It was a dangerous dream to have when survival was not yet guaranteed, but Katherine could not help it. Zach had given her permission to hope, to want, to dream of a future. She was not going to waste that gift. On the 8th night, disaster nearly struck. They were crossing a rocky plateau when Daisy stumbled, her hoof catching in a crack between stones. The mare went down hard, throwing Katherine from the saddle. She hit the ground and rolled, the breath knocked from her lungs. Zach was off Chester in an instant, running to her. "Katherine, are you hurt?" She could not answer for a moment, fighting to draw breath. When air finally returned to her lungs, she gasped, "I think I am all right, just bruised." Zach helped her sit up, his hands running over her arms and legs, checking for breaks. "Nothing seems broken. That was a hard fall." "Daisy?" Katherine asked, worried about the horse. Zach went to check the mare. "Her hoof is fine, just a scrape, but she is favoring her left front leg. Might have strained something." They made camp right there, unable to continue with Daisy injured. Zach wrapped the mare's leg and gave her extra water and grain. "She needs rest. We will have to stay here tomorrow, let her recover." Katherine felt guilty, though the fall was not her fault. Every delay was another chance for Morrison to catch up, another day before they reached safety. But there was nothing to be done. Daisy could not travel with an injured leg. The delay ended up being a blessing in disguise. The forced rest gave Katherine's bruises time to heal and allowed Zach to catch up on sleep. By the following evening, Daisy's leg had improved enough to continue, though they kept the pace gentle. They were 10 days out from the ranch when they saw smoke on the horizon. Not campfire smoke, but thick black columns that spoke of buildings burning. Zach's face went grim. "That is coming from where the town of Mina should be, about 15 miles south." "Should we investigate?" Katherine asked, though part of her wanted to stay far away from whatever was happening. "No, not our fight, and we cannot afford the delay." But Zach kept watching the smoke, his jaw tight. Katherine knew it cost him to ride past trouble. That was the kind of man he was. 2 nights later, they encountered their first real problem. They had stopped at a small creek to water the horses when a voice called out from the darkness. "Hold it right there, friends. Keep your hands where I can see them." Zach froze, his hand moving away from his gun. Katherine's heart hammered. 3 men emerged from the shadows, all armed. They were rough-looking, clothes dirty and faces hard. Not Morrison's men, she realized. These were opportunists seeing easy prey. "We do not want trouble," Zach said calmly, "just passing through." "Sure you are," the leader said. He was a big man with a scarred face, "but you see, this is our water. There is a toll for using it." "We did not see any signs posted," Zach said. "Well, consider this your sign." The man's eyes traveled over Katherine, and she felt her skin crawl. "Though maybe the lady can pay the toll. She is pretty enough." "That is not happening," Zach said, his voice going flat and dangerous. "I do not think you are in a position to negotiate, Cowboy. There are 3 of us and 1 of you." "Actually," Katherine said, finding her voice, "there are 2 of us. And I am armed." She drew the pistol Zach had given her, her hand steady despite her racing heart. The 3 men looked surprised. Clearly, they had not expected resistance from a woman. The leader laughed, but it sounded forced. "Lady, do you even know how to use that thing?" "Zach taught me," Katherine said, "and he is a very good teacher. Now we are going to get back on our horses and ride away. You can let us go peacefully, or this can get ugly. Your choice." For a tense moment, no one moved. Then one of the other men spoke up. "Come on, Jake. It is not worth getting shot over a couple of canteens of water. Let them go." Jake clearly wanted to argue, but he was outnumbered by his own men. "Fine. Get out of here, but you better hope we do not meet again." Zach and Katherine mounted quickly, keeping their weapons ready. They rode away at a steady pace, not running but not dawdling either. Only when they were a good mile away did Zach let out a breath. "That was well done," he said. "You kept your head." "I was terrified," Katherine admitted. "But I meant what I said. You are a good teacher." "Let us hope we do not have to put those lessons to use again," Zach said, but his hand rested on his gun for the rest of the night's ride. They were 12 days out from the ranch when Carson City finally came into view. The state capital was larger than Pioche, with proper streets and buildings that looked permanent rather than thrown up hastily around mining claims. Katherine felt a surge of hope at the sight of it. "We made it," she breathed. "We are not done yet," Zach cautioned. "Now comes the hard part. Getting people to listen." They found a small hotel on the edge of town and took 2 rooms. Katherine had never been so happy to see a real bed and a wash basin with clean water. She scrubbed days of trail dust from her skin and changed into her dress, which she had kept carefully packed. Looking in the cracked mirror, she saw a different woman than the one who had fled Pioche nearly 2 weeks ago. Thinner, sun-bronzed, but with steel in her eyes that had not been there before. Zach met her in the hotel dining room for a late supper. He had shaved and cleaned up, and Katherine was struck anew by how handsome he was. Handsome and good and everything she had not known she needed. "Tomorrow we go see my friend at the marshal's office," Zach said. "His name is Robert Hayes. Good man, honest as they come. If anyone can help us, it is him." Katherine nodded, pushing food around her plate. Suddenly she was not hungry. Tomorrow would determine everything. Either they would be believed or they would not. Either justice would prevail or it would not. Zach reached across the table and took her hand. "Whatever happens, we face it together. You are not alone in this anymore." "I know," Katherine said. "That is the only reason I can do this at all." That night, Katherine lay in her hotel bed and tried to calm her racing thoughts. She could hear Zach moving around in the next room, separated from her by a thin wall. She wished he were closer, wished she could curl up in his arms and let his steadiness anchor her, but that would not be proper. They were not married, barely even courting in any formal sense. What they had was forged in crisis and danger, and Katherine still was not sure if it would survive the light of normal day. But she wanted the chance to find out. God, how she wanted that chance. Morning came too quickly. Katherine dressed carefully in her best dress, the blue calico she had been examining when this all started back in Pioche. She pinned up her hair and tried to look respectable, trustworthy. A woman whose word should be believed. Zach waited for her in the hotel lobby. He had worn his cleanest clothes and made an attempt to tame his hair. He looked like a respectable rancher, solid and dependable. "Ready?" he asked, "as I will ever be." The territorial marshal's office was housed in a sturdy stone building near the center of town. Inside, a young clerk looked up as they entered. "Can I help you?" "We are here to see Deputy Marshal Robert Hayes," Zach said. "Tell him Zachary Dalton is here. He will remember me." The clerk disappeared into a back room. A few minutes later, a man emerged. He was in his 30s with brown hair and sharp eyes. When he saw Zach, his face broke into a smile. "Zach Dalton, I will be damned. I heard you settled down to ranching. What brings you to Carson City? Official business, Rob, serious business." Zach's tone wiped the smile from Hayes's face. "Is there somewhere private we can talk?" Hayes ushered them into an office and closed the door. "All right, what is this about?" Zach looked at Katherine. "Miss Lawson has a story you need to hear. It involves corruption, murder, and a federal judge." For the next hour, Katherine told her story again. Every detail, every moment, from witnessing the bribe to the fire that killed her landlady to Frank Morrison hunting her across Nevada. Hayes listened without interrupting, his expression growing more serious with each revelation. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Those are serious allegations, Miss Lawson. Accusations against a federal judge require serious proof." "I know," Katherine said. "I do not have physical proof, just my testimony, but I swear on my life that every word is true." Hayes leaned back in his chair, thinking. "Judge James Morrison, I have heard of him. California Circuit Court, right?" "Yes." "And his brother Frank has been hunting you?" "Yes. He found me in Pioche, shot at me, would have killed me if Zach had not helped me." Hayes looked at Zach. You witnessed this, not the shooting in town, but I saw Morrison and his men confront us at my ranch. He made it clear he was there to kill Katherine or take her with him to the same end. Hayes drummed his fingers on his desk. All right, here is what I can do. I can send telegrams to the territorial governor and to federal authorities in San Francisco, laying out your allegations. I can request an investigation into the Terrence Vaughn case and Judge Morrison's handling of it. But Miss Lawson, you need to understand that investigations take time. Weeks, maybe months, and you will likely be called to testify if it goes to trial. I understand, Katherine said. I am prepared to do whatever it takes. There is another problem, Hayes continued. If Morrison gets wind that you are making formal accusations, he will escalate his efforts to silence you. You will need protection. She has protection, Zach said firmly. Me. Hayes looked skeptical. No offense, Zach, but one cowboy against hired killers is not great odds. I can arrange for her to stay in protective custody here in Carson City. No, Katherine said immediately. I have been running and hiding for months. I'm not locking myself in a jail cell, even for protection. Then what do you suggest? Hayes asked. Katherine looked at Zach. He met her eyes and nodded, understanding passing between them without words. I am going back to the ranch with Zach. If Morrison comes, we will be ready. But I am not giving up my freedom to stay safe. That is just another kind of prison. Hayes sighed. I cannot force you. But I strongly recommend against it. He pulled out paper and started writing. I will send these telegrams today. I will also contact some colleagues in California, people I trust, and ask them to start nosing around Judge Morrison's cases. If there was one bribe, there might be others. If we can establish a pattern, it strengthens your testimony. Thank you, Katherine said, feeling tears of relief building. Thank you for believing me. I did not say I believe you, Hayes said, but his tone was gentle. I said I will investigate. But Zach vouches for you, and that counts for a lot in my book. He is one of the most honest men I know. They left the marshal's office with a sense of accomplishment tempered by realism. Katherine had told her story to someone in authority. That was something. But Hayes was right about the danger. Morrison would not stop just because she had made formal accusations. If anything, it would make him more desperate. What now? Katherine asked as they walked back to the hotel. Now we get supplies and head home, Zach said. Back to the ranch, where Thomas is probably worried sick, wondering if we survived. Home, Katherine repeated. The word felt strange and wonderful on her tongue. When had she started thinking of the ranch as home? They spent one more night in Carson City, resting before the long journey back. Katherine lay in her hotel bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything that had happened. In the span of 2 weeks, her entire life had changed. She had gone from running alone to having allies, from hopeless to hopeful, from solitary to loved, because she did love Zach. She knew that now with certainty. It was not just gratitude or fear-driven attachment. It was real, deep, and enduring. She loved his steadiness, his integrity, his quiet strength. She loved the way he looked at her, like she was precious and strong all at once. She loved that he had never once suggested she should stay quiet to stay safe. He supported her fight for justice while protecting her body. That balance was rare and precious. The next morning, they began the journey home. Home. Katherine could not stop thinking of it that way. They retraced their route, moving faster now without the need for such extreme caution. Hayes had promised to send word if there were any developments, and Katherine had given him the location of Zach's ranch. The return journey took 8 days. They fell back into the rhythm of night riding and day rest, but it felt different now. Less desperate, more purposeful. They were not running from something but returning to something. There was a subtle but important distinction. On the sixth night, as they rested beside a small fire, Zach finally voiced what Katherine knew they had both been thinking about. "When we get back to the ranch, we need to talk. About us. About what happens next." Katherine's heart beat faster. "All right." "I meant what I said before we left," Zach continued. "About falling in love with you. That has not changed. It has only gotten stronger. But I need to know what you want, Katherine. Do you want to stay at the ranch? Do you want to go somewhere else? Do you see a future with me? Or is this just temporary until you feel safe again?" Katherine took a breath. "I love you too. I think I have since that first day in the alley, though I was too scared to admit it. And yes, I want to stay at the ranch. I want to build a life with you if you will have me." The smile that broke across Zach's face was like sunrise. "If I will have you, Katherine, you are all I want. You and a future together and the chance to wake up next to you every morning for the rest of my life." He pulled her close and kissed her, deep and thorough and full of promise. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. "When we get home," Zach said, "I am asking you properly, with a ring and everything. But I need you to know right now that I want to marry you. Want to spend my life protecting you, supporting you, loving you." "Yes," Katherine said simply. "Yes to all of it." They held each other under the stars, and Katherine felt a peace she had not known in years, maybe ever. Despite everything, despite the danger and uncertainty, she had found something worth fighting for. Someone worth fighting for, and someone willing to fight for her in return. 2 days later, they crested the ridge overlooking Zach's ranch. Katherine's heart leaped at the sight of the familiar buildings, the creek, the grazing cattle. Thomas must have seen them coming because he emerged from the house, raising a hand in greeting when they rode up. His normally impassive face showed clear relief. "About time you got back." "I was starting to worry. We ran into some delays," Zach said, dismounting and helping Katherine down. "But we made it to Carson City. Told the story to Deputy Marshal Hayes. He is investigating." Thomas nodded. "Good, no trouble on the way back, nothing we could not handle." They spent the evening catching up, telling Thomas everything that had happened. He listened quietly, asking occasional questions. When they got to the part about Katherine and Zach's feelings for each other, Thomas's expression softened into something that might have been a smile. "About time," was all he said. "House has felt empty without someone for Zach to look at with those puppy dog eyes." Zach threw a biscuit at him, and Katherine laughed. It felt good to laugh, to be among friends, to feel safe. She helped clean up after supper, moving around the kitchen like she belonged there. Because she did belong there. This was her home now. Later, after Thomas had retired to his own small cabin behind the main house, Zach took Katherine's hand and led her outside. The night was clear and cool, stars blazing overhead. He walked her down to the creek, where cottonwood leaves rustled in the breeze. "I know I said I would do this properly with a ring," Zach said, "but I cannot wait any longer. Katherine Lawson, will you marry me? Will you stay here and build a life with me? Will you be my wife, my partner, my love?" Katherine felt tears streaming down her face, but they were happy tears. "Yes. Yes to everything. I will marry you, Zachary Dalton. I will stay and build a life and be your wife. Nothing would make me happier." Zach pulled her into his arms and kissed her, and Katherine kissed him back with all the love and hope and joy she felt. They stood there by the creek, holding each other, and Katherine thought that this was what happy felt like. This was what home felt like. The next morning, Katherine woke in Zach's bed, wrapped in his arms. They had not made love, not yet. That would wait for marriage. But they had spent the night holding each other, talking about the future, making plans. It had been intimate and sweet and perfect. Now, in the early morning light, Katherine studied Zach's sleeping face. The strong jaw, the dark eyelashes, the peaceful expression. This man had saved her in every way a person could be saved. And she would spend the rest of her life proving that she could save him right back, could be his partner in truth. As if sensing her gaze, Zach's eyes opened. When he saw her watching him, he smiled. Morning, soon to be Mrs. Dalton. Morning, soon to be Mr. Catherine's husband, she teased. He laughed and pulled her closer. We should probably get up. Thomas will be wondering where we are. Let him wonder, Katherine said, but she allowed Zach to extract himself from the bed. They dressed and went out to find Thomas already working, feeding the horses. The days fell into a routine. Katherine learned the rhythms of ranch life, helping with chores, cooking meals, tending the kitchen garden Thomas had started. Zach taught her to rope cattle, to read weather signs, to handle the ranch accounts. She was a quick learner, and Zach was a patient teacher. 2 weeks after their return, a rider came from town bearing a telegram. It was from Deputy Marshal Hayes. Katherine's hands shook as she read it. Investigation underway. Stop evidence of multiple bribes. Stop Judge Morrison suspended pending inquiry. Stop Terrence Vaughn arrested. Stop you may be called to testify. Stop stay safe. Stop Hayes. Katherine read the telegram 3 times, making sure she understood. Then she looked up at Zach with tears streaming down her face. They believe me. They are investigating. Judge Morrison has been suspended. Zach swept her into his arms, spinning her around. You did it, Katherine, you did it. We did it, she corrected. I could not have gotten this far without you. Thomas appeared in the doorway, drawn by the commotion. When they explained, he actually smiled, a rare and precious sight. Justice. Finally. That night they celebrated with a special supper in Thomas's secret stash of whiskey. Katherine allowed herself to truly believe for the first time that maybe it was over. Maybe she was really, finally safe. But the universe had one more test for them. 3 nights later, Katherine woke to the smell of smoke. She sat bolt upright, her heart racing. Fire. The ranch house was on fire. Zach, she screamed, shaking him awake. He was up immediately, assessing the situation. Smoke was seeping under the bedroom door. We have to get out, now. They ran for the door, but when Zach opened it, flame roared into the room. He slammed it shut. Window. We go out the window. He smashed the glass with a chair and helped Katherine through. She dropped to the ground, rolling to absorb the impact. Zach came through right behind her. They ran toward the barn, coughing from smoke inhalation. Thomas met them halfway, his rifle in hand. Morrison, he said grimly. I saw them, 4 men. They set the fire and are waiting for you to come out. Even as he spoke, a bullet whined past Katherine's head. She dropped to the ground, her heart hammering. This was it. Morrison had come for his final attempt. Get to the barn, Zach ordered. We can defend from there. They ran, bullets kicking up dirt around them. One caught Thomas in the shoulder, spinning him around. Katherine grabbed his other arm, helping him keep moving. Zach provided covering fire with his pistol, forcing Morrison's men to take cover. They made it to the barn and barricaded themselves inside. The house was fully engulfed now, flames reaching toward the sky. Katherine felt grief at the sight but pushed it aside. They could rebuild a house. They could not rebuild lives. How bad? Zach asked Thomas, examining his shoulder. When clean through, I will live. Thomas's face was pale but determined. There are 4 of them, Zach said, checking his ammunition. We have 3 rifles and our pistols. If we can hold until daylight, maybe they will break off. Or reinforcements will come from town, Katherine said. That fire is visible for miles. They settled in to wait, taking positions at windows and gaps in the barn walls. The night dragged on, marked by occasional shots from Morrison's men testing their defenses. Each time, Zach or Thomas returned fire, keeping them at bay. As dawn approached, Katherine saw movement. The four attackers were gathering, preparing for an assault. She recognized Frank Morrison among them. "They are coming," she warned. "Let them," Zach said grimly. "We are ready." The assault came hard and fast. Morrison's men rushed the barn from two sides, firing as they came. Zach, Katherine, and Thomas met them with disciplined fire. One attacker went down, then another. Morrison himself made it to the barn door, trying to force it open. Zach met him there. They grappled, both men fighting with desperate strength. Katherine wanted to help but did not dare shoot for fear of hitting Zach. She watched in terror as they struggled, neither gaining advantage. Then Morrison got his hand on his gun, bringing it up toward Zach's head. Katherine did not think. She fired. The bullet took Morrison in the shoulder, spinning him away from Zach. He fell, his gun flying from his hand. Zach was on him instantly, pinning him to the ground. "It is over, Morrison. You are done." The remaining two attackers, seeing their leader down and two of their number dead, fled. Thomas tried to shoot after them but was too weak from blood loss. Zach let them go, focused on securing Morrison. As the sun rose fully, riders appeared on the horizon. A lot of them. Katherine tensed, but Zach shook his head. "That is a posse. Someone in town saw the fire and raised the alarm." The posse was led by the sheriff from Pioche, a man named Garrett. When he saw the scene, the burning house, the dead men, the captured Frank Morrison, his eyes went wide. "What in the hell happened here?" Zach explained quickly. The sheriff listened, then looked at Morrison. "You are Frank Morrison, brother of Judge James Morrison." "I want a lawyer," Morrison spat. "You will get one, right before you hang." The sheriff's voice was cold. "We got a telegram yesterday from Carson City, asking us to be on the lookout for you. Seems there is a warrant for your arrest in connection with attempted murder, arson, and conspiracy. That was before tonight's fun." He looked at Katherine. "You must be Miss Lawson." "The marshal said you were under threat." Looks like he was right. In the chaos that followed, Katherine clung to Zach's hand like a lifeline. Morrison was taken into custody, his surviving men hunted down. Thomas's shoulder was tended by the town doctor who had come with the posse. The house burned to its foundation, everything Zach had built reduced to ash and smoke. As the posse prepared to leave, taking Morrison with them, the sheriff approached Katherine. "Miss Lawson, you should know that Terrence Vaughn is singing like a bird." Trying to reduce his sentence by testifying against Judge Morrison. "Apparently, there were a lot more bribes than just the one you saw. You were right to speak up. You saved lives." Katherine nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. The sheriff tipped his hat and rode away with his prisoner. When they were alone, just the three of them standing in the ruins of the ranch, Katherine finally let herself break down. She sobbed into Zach's chest, all the fear and tension of the past months pouring out. Zach held her, his own tears falling into her hair. "We will rebuild," he said softly. "We will make it even better than before." "Together," Katherine said. "We will do it together." Thomas, one arm in a sling, put his good hand on both their shoulders. Family rebuilds family, and so they did. Over the following months, word spread of what had happened. People from all over the territory sent help. Some sent money, some sent materials, some came in person to help rebuild. Deputy Marshal Hayes came from Carson City with news that Judge Morrison had been formally charged and would stand trial. Katherine would need to testify, but Hayes promised full protection. The trial happened 6 months later in San Francisco. Katherine and Zach traveled there together, now as husband and wife. They had married in a simple ceremony at the rebuilt ranch house, with Thomas as witness and half the territory in attendance. It had been the happiest day of Katherine's life. At the trial, Katherine told her story one final time. Under oath to a packed courtroom, she described what she had seen. Terrence Vaughn's testimony corroborated hers. Other victims of Judge Morrison's corruption came forward. The case was airtight. Judge James Morrison was convicted on multiple counts of bribery, corruption, and conspiracy to commit murder. He was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. His brother Frank received a death sentence for murder and arson, though it was later commuted to life imprisonment. Terrence Vaughn was convicted of murder and died in prison 3 years later. The families of his 3 victims received financial compensation, and their names were finally, officially recorded: Chen Wai, Liu Yang, and Wang Feng. Katherine made sure their names were carved into a memorial stone that she had placed in the town square of the rebuilt Pioche. After the trial, Katherine and Zach returned to their ranch. The house was bigger now, with 6 rooms instead of 4, room for the family they planned to have. The barn had been rebuilt stronger. The herd had grown. And Thomas was now a full partner in the operation, his name on the deed alongside theirs. Katherine often stood on the porch in the evenings, watching the sun set over the Nevada hills, and marveled at how her life had changed. She had come to Pioche running from death. She had found life instead. Found love, found purpose, found home. 2 years after the trial, Katherine gave birth to their first child, a son they named William after Zach's father. He was followed 2 years later by a daughter, Grace. Then another son, Samuel. The house filled with laughter and life, with children who grew up knowing both their parents loved them fiercely. Thomas became Uncle Thomas to the children, teaching them to ride and track and respect the land. He never married, seemingly content with his role as partner, friend, and family. The ranch prospered. Zach's vision of a place where people were judged by character, not color, became reality. They employed workers of all backgrounds, paying fair wages and treating everyone with respect. It became known as the most progressive ranch in Nevada, and people came from all over seeking work. Katherine never stopped fighting for justice. She used her experience to advocate for court reform, for better protections for witnesses, for recognition of crimes against Chinese immigrants and other marginalized groups. She wrote articles under her own name, spoke at gatherings, became a voice for those who had none. And through it all, Zach was beside her, supporting her causes, protecting her when old enemies surfaced, loving her with a constancy that never wavered. They grew old together, their hair turning gray, their children having children of their own. On their 30th wedding anniversary, Katherine and Zach sat on the porch of their ranch house, watching their grandchildren play in the yard. Thomas, now elderly himself, dozed in a chair nearby. "You ever regret it?" Katherine asked. "That day in the alley when you decided to help a stranger." Zach took her hand, his touch as familiar as breathing after all these years. "Not for 1 second. You brought trouble, that is true, but trouble was worth it. You were worth it. You are worth everything." "I brought you trouble," Katherine said, repeating words she had spoken to him that first day. "I should have walked away." Zach smiled, the same smile that had won her heart in an alley in Pioche 3 decades before. "Trouble is worth it if it brought you here today, and every day since." Katherine leaned her head on his shoulder, watching their grandchildren play, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of gold and rose. She thought about that scared woman who had run through an alley, certain she was going to die. She thought about the cowboy who had caught her, kept her safe, loved her into wholeness. Sometimes the worst trouble led to the best blessings. Sometimes running from death meant running straight into life. Sometimes a single moment of courage, of reaching out instead of pulling away, changed everything. Katherine had found her home, her love, her purpose. She had found justice for 3 men whose lives mattered. She had built a family, a legacy, a life worth living. And it had all started with a cowboy who believed that trouble was worth it if it brought her to him. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Katherine closed her eyes and gave thanks for every moment, every struggle, every blessing. Her story had started in fear and blood, but it had ended in love and light. And that made every hard mile, every terrifying moment worth it. The ranch stood solid under the Nevada sky, a testament to hope and love, and the power of standing up for what was right. Children's laughter filled the air, the sound of life continuing, of legacy building. Katherine squeezed Zach's hand and he squeezed back, their connection as strong as it had been that first day. Trouble had brought them together. Love had kept them together. And they would remain together until their last breath and beyond. Two souls who had recognized each other in a dusty alley and chosen to walk the rest of life's path hand in hand. That was their story. That was their triumph. That was their love. And it was worth every bit of trouble it had taken to find it.